Hey there, this is Ben Sanford with Tribal Edge and the Primal Lab, and I'm here with part two of a little free course I'm doing just called the Spring Reset. And if you checked it out last time, we were talking about we're doing this from the perspective of three labs that are part of Primal Lab. So last time it was focusing on from the body lab perspective, so kind of your body. This time I'm taking the perspective from Earth Lab and looking at how to kind of engage with the earth during springtime. And, there's so many ways to talk about that, to do that, but I want to just take one perspective, which is through the perspective of plants and connecting with plants. So springtime, there's a time where I noticed that when I went outside, it was at first it was so green that it kind of hurt my eyes. It was just that moment of spring where I'm like, okay, transitioning, right? It's so coming back to life. And right now we're well beyond that. It's everything's blossoming and the birds are here and it's so beautiful out. So, if you have a practice, one of them, and we'll talk about this again with the Soul Lab, but the practice of a sit spot, which is basically going out and finding a spot easy to get to that's gives you a sense of being immersed in nature, where you can begin to observe the creatures and entities around you, and also just the patterns and the flow of nature itself, and within you. So, if you have a sit spot or want to start that practice, it's a great way to kind of combine. Um, well, it's a great tool to use for accessing the plant world because often when we go outside, there are plants around us, right? So, I'm going to give you a few insights that I found useful in studying plants and herbalism. Let's see, I'm trying to just pull up a little file here. Um, just to give you kind of an idea of how I think about this. And, again, plants are such a beautiful and bright, alive creature. And in the springtime, they're changing so fast. And it just, it's such a natural way to connect with the earth. Plus, we rely on them for so many things, our food and every other animal's food. They're transforming the sunshine into food. So these amazing creatures around us, the plant world. I just want to take a little time to focus on that. So before you run out and just start chomping down on anything out there, we're going to talk a little bit about edible plants, but I'm going to be careful. I'm being cautious because of liability, and I want to make sure everyone stays safe. And I think it's responsible to know what you're doing with plant world, even though there are some very safe things. I mean, and there's actually very relatively few harmful things depending on where you live, I guess. But let's just go through this in a practical and systematic way. So, first thing to think of in terms of a plant study is um, to realize that everything about a plant is communication. This is an idea that I've really kind of come to through my study with um, what I've learned from Tom Brown Jr., and his approach to the plant world and medicine and healing and stuff, and also through Western herbalism and alchemical herbalism and some of those older traditions. They really seem to converge on the idea that everything about plants is a communication. So, what does that mean, and why is that important? So, you could even look at just starting with the appearance of a plant and its morphology or its structure, the way it's designed or its pattern. You know, these things in terms of color, texture, shape, all of these things, we have co-evolved with these creatures for, you know, well, a very long time. And so we have this old history with the plant world and how they connect to us, how they interact, how we interact with them, how they affect us in our bodies. And even though us modern people may be a little out of touch with that, we can tap into some of that wisdom by being quiet and still and kind of into meditative and introspective state, and just connecting with the plant, meaning just sitting with near one, really soaking it in with our senses and noticing what we're experiencing. It might give us little images, we might have little thoughts or memories or sensations even in our body. And all of that is communication. So that's kind of what I mean by communication. It's sensations, thoughts, emotions, feelings, and as if you're having an interaction or a conversation in a sense with the plant. This isn't at a mental level. There is some mental stuff going on for sure, but it's also at a very visceral level and a gentler space. So starting with, if we think about plants as communication, starting with their appearance and their structure or morphology, these things can give us insight into the nature of the plant. Now, doesn't mean this isn't like always reliable. I mean, you don't want to just trust whatever you're imagining, but take it as information. Take it as like you're building a story, a relationship. It's kind of like when you meet a person for the first time, you may have a short conversation with them and you get an impression about who they are, right? You might even kind of think you kind of know who they might be, but if you hang out with them more, you might realize that you were kind of off. There's other ways or other aspects about this person that you really didn't get in the first interaction, right? So allowing this to grow like a relationship, your understanding. So, and it's just fun. It's fun to kind of just imagine. So other things that are communication are its growth patterns, how it handles what is its life cycle and how does it go through life? Is it a low growing plant, that only lives for 1 year, one season? Or is it a plant that sticks around for a long time? Does it have different stages? Like 1 year it might have a flowering stage or a stalk or something, and the next year it doesn't. It might go through kind of a biannual cycle. What are the different growth patterns and what's its survival strategy? What does it do for a living is what we might ask a person. So, and then behavior. So how does it respond to sun? How does it respond to the different elemental forces? Or how does it heal? How does it move in a way? So, what is its strategies for handling the landscape? Which is another one, another communication is really its location, like a specific plant, where it's growing and how it's growing. And maybe is it pushing up between, on the gravel driveway, or is it in the very soft, damp and shaded soil in the woods? What's its environment? Where does it like to be? Where does it hang out? What's its kind of personality that way, right? And then we have through our senses, and this is kind of the classic communication of the smells, the textures, and the tastes, if it's edible, and its effect on our bodies. So with those senses, we can use our smell and taste and touch to really gather a lot of information. Like, is it prickly? Is it dry? Is it moist? Is it slimy? What is it like? The wet. What's the smell? Man, there's so much in smells. Like, what does this remind you of? What is it? Does it give you like a warm sensation inside or a chill down your spine or anything like that? How does that affect your sensations? And of course, taste. So again, with care, it's appropriate. What is the taste? How does that affect you? And by affecting your body, you might even get images, you might get sensations, you might get immediate sensations of what this plant, how it's affecting you. And it will often be really subtle, but the more you learn to pay attention to it, kind of the louder it gets. So anyway, that's some ideas about plants as communication, or everything about a plant is communication. The second point I wanted to bring up is that a systems approach to plants is the most effective way to approach plants. So, and that's because plants themselves are systems. So, systems are anything that has a number of parts that are coming together to create something that's greater than the sum of its parts, right? So it's something that has parts and relationships that another emergent whole comes from that. So you have a plant that has the roots, it has leaves, it has flower and seeds, it has all these different things, which aren't you couldn't actually separate. And if you do, if you take a leaf off or a flower off, you know that it starts to die right away. So these things are all they all need each other. They're all interacting, and plants really only operate as a whole. And then they actually operate as a whole system within a greater system. They operate within an environment. So you can't really isolate a plant in that sense. So understanding that is a way that we can interact with them and understand them and also use them, because plants are uh, are these little systems that affect other systems like your body. Your body's a system. And so a systems approach or a systems um, perspective really changes how you interact with the plant and how you might think about how they work and how they affect you. So um, understanding the plant as a whole is really important. Taking a look at or paying attention to the patterns, the processes, and its relationships in the world. So, as I mentioned, seeing it as something greater than the sum of its parts that's embedded in an environment and has stages of growth in process, right? So it's going through it's going through this ongoing process of living and always changing. Um, you can see it as part of a larger ecological community. It has a role there, and it also interacts systemically with other systems, including our bodies, as I mentioned. So when we tie that together with plants, everything about a plant is communication, we get to some interesting places where we can realize that plants are not, like if we are using a medicinal plant, for example, when it goes into our body, it's in few cases is the plant, constituents itself running around and repairing and fixing things like a little nanobot or something, really, and simpler or maybe a more effective, realistic way to think of what plants are doing is to think of them as communicating with their body. So that's why we can have such a small amount, like a tea or something, and have these trace amounts of plants coming into our body and making these significant changes systemically. They're like little keys that are opening doors for us, or they're flipping on the switches that we need so that our body can do the healing that it needs to do. It's communicating with us and reminding us in our body systems to align with the proper functioning. So um, in that case, the way we use it changes the way we use plants. It might change it in terms of how much volume you think you need, or part of the plant and that kind of thing when you start to use them medicinally. But anyway, getting ahead of myself a little bit. As far as a project to play with, or a practice to play with plants, one simple way, and this is something that Tom teaches and many herbalists I think teach, is to get to know one plant well. So an easy way to do this is to find one outside your doorstep, or on your path on your way to your car, or something that you'll walk by every day. Just pay attention to it. Something that will be protected and won't get mowed or weed whacked or something. Maybe put a little marker by it and kind of honor it that way, and let it be your little friend that you start to get to know, and just watch it throughout the year, watch it throughout the seasons, um, starting now in spring. And we're into spring a bit, so it's probably already kind of starting its growth, but you can see it through its whole life cycle that way, which is really a cool way and an important way to get to know the plants, so that you can identify them at all times of the year as well. If you start with one plant, you won't get overwhelmed, and just look at it when you can. Pause and say hi to it as you go by. Just notice where it's at in its growth, and care for it. And then if you get a chance on some days, maybe hang out with it a little longer and really study it, maybe draw it or something like that. Take some pictures of it would be fun. So get to know its personality um, that way. And then another way to kind of get into the plant world quickly is to start to understand plants through their families. And this is something that's taught very well by um, shoot. Anyway, oh, I can't remember the guy's name. He wrote Botany in a Day. So check out that book. And it's a patterns approach to understanding plants, kind of a systematic approach. Um, and really, really powerful. It helps you, there's so many plants to know out there. And if you want to get into this, it's a great way to get to simplify and reduce the amount of information by by understanding plants through their family groups. So get to know the environmental conditions that your plant prefers and grows in. And again, watch it through the seasons. So it could be that easy, just start with that. And that can help you attune also in your life to the natural seasons and stages of growth and times of year and how they might impact you. But just by watching your little plant and let it be a teacher for you. So last thing I wanted to say here was just um, to emphasize the importance of safety with plants. And I know a lot of us are excited to engage with them and eat them and put them in our bodies and try them with different medicines and stuff, which is awesome. Just want to be really careful with that because plants are so unique as individuals, and so are you. And you never know what sensitivities you might have, or unique responses you might have different plants. So you want to do that kind of with. It's not like going to the grocery store where everything's just like really known and kind of actually kind of not as potent because it's grown on big farms and stuff. These wild plants are super potent, and they're super they have a lot of information to share with you. So you want to do this gradually, slowly, and very positively, making sure you know what you're doing. So I outlined 4 edible and medicinal plants rather than giving you a list of plants to go try, because there's always the risk that you might misinterpret or misidentify a plant. I'm just going to give you some guidelines on identifying or engaging with plants, and then you can go try it yourself. So I'm using these questions: what, why, when, where, and how, to kind of guide the process. So with a what question, what is it? You want to positively identify the plant. So for this doesn't mean you just go find a field guide and look at one picture and be like, oh yeah, that's got it. The pictures can be misleading if they don't have the plants at different times of year. So you want to get either really good field guides that have these different stages of growth and mention that in their description and their photos, or there are some really good plant ID apps actually that you can take a picture. But even then, they're not going to be 100% because they're going to give you different possibilities usually. So what you want to do is cross-reference. You want to look through as many resources as possible and make sure that they're all saying, yes, this is what this plant is. And the best way, of course, is to have an expert or mentor who has already risked their life and their health to identify plants and knows what they're talking about. So you do want to take it with that, that thought in mind, though. Is it worth risking your health over to experiment with? So make sure you know absolutely what you're putting in your body before you do. So you want to be able to identify the plant at all times of year and at all stages of growth. Really important, because sometimes they look very different. Sometimes it'll just be a little brown little twiggy thing on the ground in the wintertime and totally leafed out in the summertime. So very different looking. You want to learn what parts of the plant are edible. Maybe they're not all equal, and so make sure you in your study you research what parts of the plants are edible. And remember, with your research too, you can always ask the plant as well directly. Always just ask the plant in your body. I mean, don't stop there. Don't just rely on that only, but make sure you include that in your research, and then also get the field guides, get the cross-referencing, and get your mentor to help you. What else? So all times of year, all stages of growth, all the parts. The why question. Knowing why you're using it and why you're harvesting it. Remember, these are living creatures. They don't want to just be ripped out of the ground and stuff. They have a life too. So make sure you have a reason and know why. In other words, how does that, what's it for? Like, what are you doing with it? So this is another place for research, for connection, communication. It's okay to practice. Plants are very giving. They'll heal. They'll recover. But just think of that step of why. Along with that too, in terms of harvesting, you want to you know not take everything. So be thoughtful and mindful of the amount that you're harvesting. So especially anything that's kind of struggling or rare or something like that. Know when it's available, when is it best to be harvested. Um, simple. And where, obviously know where you can be found. With that, though, make sure that where you're harvesting is safe, because sometimes places get sprayed, or there's a lot of runoff and of toxins like on roadsides and stuff. So you want to avoid, give man-made areas a wide berth there. I remember going up in the foothills, and I was looking at plants even on the side of a mountain road, thinking, yeah, it's probably pretty safe out here. But then I saw these signs, and I saw these helicopters lining up, and they were doing like this massive spraying project along the whole roadway, like really toxic. Like they didn't want any people around for days. I was like, geez, so you never know. You just want to make sure you're in a wild space. Sorry, I got a call coming in. We almost made it. So last one is how to harvest and prepare it. You want to use small amounts at first. So find out. I'm going to pause this. Sorry. Nope. And it's over. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know if you can even hear it. You got a phone going off in the background. So last one is how to harvest and prepare it. These are important as well. It kind of goes to what I was saying with the sacred harvest and not over harvesting, that kind of thing. Can you harvest it in a way that the plant will keep growing maybe and it won't hurt it? Do you need to pull out the whole plant, or are you only using some aspect of it? And how to prepare it is important too. Does it need to be cooked? Does it need to be, steamed or soaked or dried or all these different things? So look into that as well in terms of your cross-referencing and research. And finally, under the how, use just small amounts at first to find out how your body responds. And don't make a whole meal out of these things. Like take a very small amount once you've gone through all these steps. And maybe the typical protocol is like touch it to your skin first. First, just smell it, hold it, touch it, rub it on your skin, see if there's any reaction. And then finally tasting it. So, and tasting it in small amounts, just touching it with your tongue, trying a small amount, and then, see how you react. So if there's any question though, if you're concerned, you don't do this with plants that you're not sure what they are. This is, even with plants that you're pretty familiar with, you want to see how your body reacts to them, what your relationship is to them. So that's a start. There's so much more on this. We get into, in the medicinal direction. Maybe we'll get into that with the Soul Lab. We definitely do eventually out at our Primal Lab, but that's just to give you a start and hopefully get you excited about getting to know this amazing plant world. And just go outside and watch these things. Look at all their different features and personalities and colors and shapes and textures, and hang out with them, get to know them, and let them nurture you back to the earth and your connection. So there you go. I hope you enjoy that. Hope you find it useful, and we'll do this again with Soul Lab next week. Thank you guys. Yeah, take care and keep going.